Wanna get a full-frame anamorphic wide-angle lens? This Sirui 35mm t2.9 1.6x is a lens to consider. Let's review this. This lens is available in 4 different mounts: Nikon Z, Sony E, Canon RF and L mount. This is the third anamorphic lens in Sirui lineup of full-frame anamorphic lenses. The first one was 50mm t2.9, the second one 75mm t2.9 as well with 1.6x squeeze ratio. Full reviews of those two lenses you can find down in the description below. And after that, Sirui released 35mm and 100mm t2.9 1.6x anamorphic lenses. And with this combo of two lenses I shot my video portrait or mini documentary with my friend Yegor. You can find the full video down in the description as well. And the full review of 100mm lens will be soon on the channel, so stay tuned. The kit is pretty standard for the whole lineup. We have front and back caps as well as pretty nice pouch for carrying this lens around. And also they've put two 35 and 100mm lenses, pretty nice stickers, the dark one and the light one. Love it. The size and weight of it weighs only 930 grams and it's the lightest and the most compact full-frame anamorphic Sirui lens. And yeah guys, you do feel this difference in size and weight. But still you'll need a monitor to properly view your image, so the full kit will be around 2.5 kilograms. But it's much easier to carry around and to shoot handheld. The build quality and materials of the whole lineup is just beautiful. We have gears on focus and aperturing, and they are in the exact same positions on the whole line of lenses, and it means that you don't have to readjust your follow focus system if you use one. The focus ring has 120 degrees of focus throw, which is pretty nice when you're working handheld for instance, but at times it seemed like it's too long because of a very big depth of field, and sometimes you just rotate your focus ring and don't see a real difference. The aperture ring is stiffer and we have markings in feet and meters on both sides of this lens. Also, it has a 1/4-20 thread for mounting the lens support or just straightly mounting it onto the tripod. But unfortunately, on the whole lineup of those lenses we don't get weather sealing. The whole lineup of lenses has 82mm filter thread, which is really convenient, and on the shoot itself I used ND64 during the daylight on the bright sun, and I think ND32 will be more than enough. As I previously said in my 75mm lens review, Sony a7S III has 16:9 sensor when shooting video, and the aspect ratio after desqueeze is 2.8:1, which is kinda narrow, but if we'll be using a camera with 3:2 sensor as Panasonic S1H and S1 and shooting in open gate mode, we'll get 2.4:1 aspect ratio. It's more regular, more usual, more classic. For the video with my friend, I have decided not to scale up the image and to leave the aspect ratio at 2.8:1. I found it more organic to this video. On Sony a7S III, horizontally we get an equivalent of 21-22mm in terms of spherical lenses, horizontally. And it's a very wide-angle lens. You get a ton of room in your shot horizontally. And at times it seems a bit weird and unnatural, but I did love this image. A few words about stabilization and IBIS system. Of course, with this wide-angle lens, it's much easier to shoot handheld, especially if we compare it to 75mm or 100mm lens. And after a series of tests, I found out that Steady Shot Active gave me better results than with IBIS turned completely off. And also I got the best results if I set Steady Shot Active to 20mm manually and not to 35mm, and the same applies to 100mm lens. If I set it to 75mm manually, it'll get me better results. And unfortunately, with manual lenses you are not able to get gyroscopic data to stabilize it in post with Catalyst Browse software. Keep that in mind. The anamorphic squeeze ratio is 1.6 throughout the whole line of lenses by Sirui, but this ratio is not constant. It is 1.6 when you focus to infinity, but then it can drop down to 1.52x at the minimum focus and distance. With 35mm lens, I almost don't see this effect in the middle of the shot, but when you look at the corners while focusing, they are kind of warping a lot. But I set the scale to 160% horizontally in all of my shots and had zero problems with it, so basically it means that this lens doesn't have any change in the squeeze ratio, which is great. I think that the main reason of it is that the anamorphic lens group is closer to the sensor itself, it's almost next to the camera mount. And in 3 other lenses, the anamorphic lens group is on the front, so basically it's kind of a built-in anamorphic adapter, and the main lens itself is spherical. Shortly speaking, the 35mm lens is a winner in this term throughout all the lineup. And what really bugs me about this lens is the minimal focusing distance, it's 90 centimeters, and considering that it's a pretty wide-angle lens, I wanna get closer, but I cannot focus close enough. For anamorphic lenses, this minimal focusing distance is okay, and it's pretty usual, but with this lens you do need diopters. It's not an option, it's a must-have. You cannot even get some closer and tighter shots without diopters. And they're pretty cheap, to be honest. I found this kit of 4 different diopters with different strength for about $20 to $30, and it's on AliExpress website, I'll leave a link down below. And of course you do lose the infinity with those diopters, but still you can only get closer with those. And in the shots you're watching right now, I did use the +4 diopter, and the results are pretty nice in my opinion. In terms of color, this lens is the same with the other lenses in this lineup. It's a bit warmer and greener, and I had 0 problems matching those 2 lenses, 35mm and 100mm. I think that the 75mm and 50mm lenses will have kind of the same color, which is very nice and convenient. My advice is to set white balance only manually and to use such instruments like RGB Parade or just the gray card and set your white balance. This lens is tack sharp, starting from t2.9 and all across the frame, which is good and bad at the same time, because with anamorphic optics we often want a bit softer look, but you can always soften the image in post using the dehancer plugin, which I used to grade this whole video by the way, or you can just set the blur effect to 1% or use a black mist filter like I show you in this example. The vignette wide open is pretty strong, let me even say extreme. It gets a bit better by T4, but after that it stays kinda the same, even at T5.6. I can't say that I had troubles with vignettes during the shoot, because it's more or less drawing the attention to the central portion of the frame. And after all, I did apply one more vignette in the Dehancer plugin to get even more attention to the part of the frame that I want. In terms of chromatic aberrations, they're almost non-existent, even when you shoot something very contrasty like branches against the sky. Optically, this lens is almost perfect, aside from distortion, as you might have noticed. Also, the focus breathing is almost non-existent, but as I showed you previously, we have a very weird distortion in the corners of the shot when we focus rack, so this might seem as a focus breathing. Well guys, let me tell you that this lens has the biggest and the weirdest distortion I've ever tested in any lens. It has a bit of barrel distortion in the middle of the frame, and vertically and horizontally we do have a very strong and pronounced pincushion distortion. The straight lines in the edges of the shot look really curvy, so sometimes it's okay to crop the image a little bit to get 2.4 to 1 aspect ratio. But don't forget guys that classic and very expensive anamorphic lenses that we often see in Hollywood movies, they also do have pretty heavy distortion, let me say extreme. So at least on the real shoot I had zero problems with distortion and it didn't mess up my shots at all. By the way, near the lens mount we have 4 special screws, and with those screws you can line up your image so it won't have some curved lines and overall weirdness in geometry. This is a great addition. There is one caveat: when you try to focus to infinity, you kinda overpass the infinity when you rotate the focus ring till the end. And this issue is apparent in all of the lineup with these lenses. I think it's made on purpose because when you use an anamorphic adapter by Sirui 1.6x, you do need to set your lens to infinity, kind of rotate the focus ring till the end to work properly. Anamorphic flares. During daytime it's pretty tough to get a blue light streak in your image. We were able to get one only when we aimed the lens directly to the sun and the sky was pretty clean, without any clouds. And the flare itself is less vibrant and less saturated than with the APS-C anamorphic lenses by Sirui. I do like this tendency. And during nighttime, when you aim your lens at something very bright like headlights of a car or your phone's torchlight, we do get a brighter and more vibrant and saturated flare, which is pretty thin. I would love to see a bit thicker, but considering the focal length, I guess it is what it is. The bokeh. Well, on this focal length and this aperture, you can hardly get any out of focus backgrounds and bokehs. They are very small, even though they are pretty much oval, and they don't lose the shape thanks to 10-bladed aperture, but nothing too crazy, guys. If you want a lot of big and oval bokehs, this lens is not for that. Overall, I did enjoy using this lens, and I have only positive things to say about it. And if I were picking a kit of 2 lenses by Sirui, I would pick this 35mm, and the second one will be 75mm, because it's not that heavy and bulky as 100mm, but it still gives you that compression and a lot of oval bokehs. I also like this lens a lot. But if the 35mm lens is too wide for you and you don't care about the size and weight of your lenses, you can pick 50 and 100mm combo. It's a very nice combo as well. About t2.9 aperture, I have already said a ton of words in my 75mm lens review and 50mm lens review. I would not repeat myself. I think you do understand the thing with this fast, not really fast aperture, guys. The price is $1,500 and you can pick any of those 4 lenses by Sirui for full frame cameras with the same price. Let me remind you guys that professional anamorphic optics for full frame, they cost 10 times more, sometimes even more, so this is not that expensive in my opinion. I would love to see a different color of the flare option by Sirui, for instance with amber flares, and also I would love to see bigger, heavier, maybe more expensive lenses but with faster aperture like t2.2 or even t2. To conclude, guys, Sirui 35mm t2.9 1.6x anamorphic lens is a wonderful lens, and I enjoyed it even more than 50mm and 75mm in the same lineup. There is something about this lens, at least to me. And considering that it's more compact and more lightweight than the others, I wanted to use this lens more. As always, guys, I do recommend you to get this lens for a test in your rental store or rental house, whatever you call it, and to try it out yourself. But I would definitely recommend getting acquainted with this 35mm lens. If you did enjoy this video, guys, please smash the like and subscribe buttons, and also the 100mm lens is being reviewed already and the review is coming soon. See you in the next video, guys. Take care. Bye.